to the special show Aadhaar Reboot. My name is Chandra Shrikant. I'm coming to you live from India's Startup and Technology Hub, Bengaluru. We're calling it Aadhaar Reboot because we broke a very important story earlier today in the afternoon on how the UIDAI is introducing two measures to enhance the privacy and security of individuals. The first of these is the virtual ID and the second being limited KYC. I'm just going to take you through very quickly through what these two mean and why it's important. So the virtual ID basically means that anybody who has an Aadhaar number can use this provision to generate another virtual number for themselves, which they can then use in all transactions. So it is an additional security layer that basically prevents anyone and everyone from knowing your Aadhaar number. So if you have an Aadhaar number, you can use this to create a virtual ID. You can create as many IDs as you want, but one at a time, and you can then revoke it and create a new one for the next transaction you are doing. So that is one part. The next part is limited KYC. Now remember, Aadhaar introduced the concept of eKYC, which is why Jio has been able to get 100 million subscribers. This was one main reason, because you just had to give your fingerprint and your authentication was done. But eKYC has come into criticism because a lot of private companies began using this to cross-sell services, to really misuse this provision. So what UIDAI has done today is to basically say that people who authenticate customers will not get the actual Aadhaar number, but they will get a UID token to authenticate that person. So this is another sort of factor to ensure that not everyone has the actual database of Aadhaar users. But remember, these two are measures from an individual privacy perspective, but there are still larger questions on the security of the database, what can be done there. More importantly, the important question of exclusion. What must the UIDAI and most importantly government agencies do that people do not miss out on basic services because they do not have an Aadhaar, or they are not able to produce an Aadhaar. So these questions have to be addressed, and in fact the other exclusive that we got today was an interview with Nandan Nilekani, the architect of Aadhaar UIDAI. He's of course currently the co-founder and chairman of Infosys, but he spoke to us about the recent concerns and what this virtual ID means. More importantly, he believes that the concerns in the last few days is part of an exaggerated, orchestrated campaign to malign Aadhaar ahead of a crucial Supreme Court hearing on its constitutional validity. Listen to this very candid interview of Nandan Nilekani. There's been an important notification from UIDAI and introduction of virtual ID as well as eKYC. What do you make of this? What ramifications will this have from a privacy point of view for an individual?
I think this is a very significant announcement by the UIDAI, and in some sense it really makes the case against it go away, because it provides two or three very important features. First is that everybody can now create a virtual ID which is attached to the Aadhaar number, and they can use that in all public places where they use the Aadhaar number. So they never have to give their original Aadhaar number, they can give this virtual ID which they can keep changing. So that means this whole issue of you have to give Aadhaar number everywhere goes away because you're giving the virtual ID. Second thing is, unless allowed by law, they're going to make sure that private companies and all will not get the full KYC but only get a limited KYC without the Aadhaar number. So they'll get a tokenized number but not the real number. So that means the issue of Aadhaar number being stored in many databases also goes away. So this is a very, very significant thing, and I think this is a great step forward. This was an idea which we had contemplated in 2010, but now I think at that time it was a little ahead of its time, but now it's a great thing, and I think it makes a huge difference. And I think it really eliminates all the arguments against Aadhaar.
Right. Just to understand, sir, there is confusion going around. Some people are saying, is this some new ID to replace Aadhaar number? It's an extra layer of security on top of your Aadhaar number, which only I can generate as an Aadhaar holder.
That is the virtual ID part of it. For example, if my Aadhaar number is 123, I generate 456 as my virtual ID. So wherever somebody says enter your Aadhaar number, I'll enter 456. I'll not enter my original 123.
Right.
After some time, if I feel that I need to change it, I can change 456 to 789. From there on, I enter 789 wherever I want. So I can keep changing my virtual ID, and it's my ID, it's nobody else's.
Right.
So that means I don't have to give my Aadhaar number anywhere if I want to use this feature.
Right. And so this I can generate how many ever times I can revoke
At
it?
any time there's only one number, but you can keep upgrading it or revoking it and creating a new one.
Right. So this certainly addresses a lot of concerns from an individual privacy
Correct.
perspective.
Correct.
The larger question people are asking is, but what about the security of the Aadhaar database? Because, there's a central database, then they have partnered with states, so they also have
But,
database.
I think if you look at the whole architecture, the way packets are encrypted and sent and so on, there's a lot of security built in. In the recent episode which caused a lot of confusion, it was really that there was a privileged login which was given to somebody else.
Correct.
And to be able to use that, you need to have an Aadhaar number to use it. You can't randomly poll the system. I mean, the Aadhaar is a 12-digit number which generates 100 billion combinations. Okay, and we only have 1 billion Aadhaar numbers. So only 1 out of 100 numbers in that possible numbers is used. So it's really impossible to really, it's not that this whole exaggeration which is going on. It was a few people could at best have been this thing, and I think that was caught immediately and stopped. This was not it was a privileged login being misused.
What can the UIDAI do to ensure this doesn't happen? I mean, shouldn't they have had biometric access for the person operating the login?
See, the thing is, it's always a balance between giving customer service and on these things, right? I mean, there are billion Indians. Many of them are illiterate. They can't read their card. So they want to call up and get some details. Now, you can shut it off. It's no big deal. But then you may also be denying good service. So we have to always balance between convenience to an individual and these issues, so which they'll find the right balance.
Right. So these measures today do a lot from a privacy perspective, but in terms of addressing the problem of exclusion, which a lot of people are talking about, there have been cases where people are denied access to basic things because of the lack of Aadhaar. What do you think can be done in that respect?
First of all, today we have 119 crore people with Aadhaar. So the lack of Aadhaar is maybe true 5 years back when there were only 20 million people with Aadhaar. Now that's not an issue. Second is that it is up to the application to deliver service even if somebody does not have an Aadhaar or if the authentication fails. That is an application design feature. In fact, the Aadhaar law is very clear. You shouldn't deny anyone. You should make alternative arrangements. So it's really a design feature of the application as much. It's not an Aadhaar issue so much.
Right. Lastly, sir, one recurring criticism that people have is, this was a system designed by technocrats. So initially it was very transparent. They used to put up everything. But increasingly, ethical hackers or security experts feel that UIDAI does not have a robust system to capture and respond to feedback, that they are constantly on the offensive or defensive. Do you think this entire issue could have been handled better, the way the FIR was filed?
No, I think there's a need to move forward. I think the fact of the matter is Aadhaar is here to stay. 119 crore people have Aadhaar. 550 million people have linked their Aadhaar bank accounts. 95,000 crores has been transferred into DBT accounts. Crores of people have opened bank accounts with eKYC. So this is here to stay. So I think rather than getting into an antagonistic view, the people who have views on Aadhaar should be constructive and work with the system.
But their issue is the system is not listening to them.
It works both ways. If you are just taking a negative view and not a constructive view, then you also have other reactions. I think everybody has to now say, okay, now Aadhaar is here to stay. I'm very confident that the Supreme Court will uphold Aadhaar under the fundamental right to privacy, because they have said that it has to be proportional. There has to be a law. The use of the abrogation of privacy should be proportional and reasonable, and it meets the test. So I'm very, very confident that the Supreme Court will. After that, what else is there?
No, that's what I wanted to ask. All this is coming also ahead of that crucial Supreme.
100% there is a orchestrated campaign to see how Aadhaar can be maligned in view of the Supreme Court. Absolutely.
So you think this is related to that? But do you think it could have any bearing on the constitutional?
No, because I think we have a fine and very sensible Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court's judgment on privacy is outstanding. They've laid a very conceptual framework under what conditions that the government can abrogate privacy. They have given 4 reasons. revenue protection, national security, criminal or social welfare benefits. So I think the Aadhaar will completely pass the test with flying colors.
Thank you so much. That was a very detailed and candid interview by Nandan Nilekani. He ends on a very assertive note where he says he's 100% sure there is an orchestrated campaign to malign Aadhaar ahead of the crucial constitutional validity hearing at the Supreme Court, which remember is happening in a few days from now. But to take this discussion forward, we have a special panel for you on ET Now. We have Nikhil Kumar from iSprit. We also have Kiran Janalagada, who's been very vocal on his concerns about Aadhaar. Remember, he's also the founder of HasGeek. We also have Pranesh Prakash from the Center for Internet and Society, who made this point about tokenization on ET Now on a special show a few days back. Thank you all of you for joining in from Bengaluru. I guess all of you joining from Bengaluru really tells us about all the experts on Aadhaar right here in India's tech capital. But I'm going to start with you, Nikhil. You heard out Nandan Nilekani's interview there on, virtual ID and limited KYC. But at some level, is this an acknowledgement that your Aadhaar number is as important, if not more important, than your biometric ID? Because so far, the justification from UIDAI, their principal defense is, your fingerprints are safe, your biometric is safe, it's only the number which is in the public domain. But by introducing these two layers, are they now acknowledging that, the Aadhaar number being in the public domain is not okay?
More than acknowledgement, I think over the years, from when Aadhaar was first designed in 2009 and the first Aadhaar was issued in 2010, the use of Aadhaar was limited just for direct beneficiary transfer, and over the years the system has evolved, finding itself in various multiple use cases, in financial inclusion today, in health inclusion and so on and so forth. I think this is a natural evolution. Just like if you look at banking, all of us have a bank account. We have a bank account number. After a particular period of time, we saw debit cards come in, wherein they replaced our signatures as the way that we transact. And now, as you may know, Unified Payments Interface, which is a layer built on top of the banking infrastructure, allows people to create virtual payment IDs, which replaces it for their bank account number. So I think this has to be seen in light of the way the market has matured, our digital infrastructure has matured, the use case for Aadhaar has increased. I see this as a positive outcome and coming at the right time.
Kiran, your quick take on this. You heard out Nandan Nilekani, your own take firstly on the virtual ID and limited KYC, and the larger point he made about this being an orchestrated campaign.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting statement to make, because it tells you how desperate they are, that they're turning to personal attacks on people who are complaining about issues. Now, I have no stake in Aadhaar. There is nothing for me to gain from it. Either it's going up or going down. I'm just another individual who wants good technology in society, who wants to be safe, who wants to see others safe. So passing character judgments like this is honestly not saying much about the person making these accusations, so that's the first thing to get out of the way. The second thing is that we should remember that virtual IDs, while they are good progress, are hardly enough. They don't affect anybody in the Aadhaar ecosystem who depends on a paper card, and that's how most people were expected to assume that those people know how to do good security practices, which has not been the case so far. That what we have seen instead is that nobody has good security practice in the entire Aadhaar ecosystem. The third thing is that the virtual ID is also not enough. If you look at the spec, it's something written in a hurry. It was obviously pushed out over the last few days because of what's been happening. I don't see them having the technical ability to do a solid implementation by March 1st as they promised. This is something that people have been asking for at least 5 years or probably longer. And to introduce something when your ecosystem is collapsing and say, look, we are listening, is not saying the right thing. We should have seen this 4 or 5 years ago, not now. What we're going to find out instead is that when it comes to actual implementation, it's going to be much worse than we all thought. This make no mistake, is just an attempt to distract everybody before a Supreme Court hearing start. It's a way to look good for the Supreme Court. It does not solve the problem. It's bad design. It is bad implementation. It will only cause more problems because there are too many gaps in the specification.
Right. Kiran, hold your thoughts. I'm afraid we have to take a small break at this point, but Nikhil, Kiran and Pranesh, please stay on with us. We want to discuss, the security aspect with Pranesh as well when we come back. So stay tuned and come back to this special show, Aadhaar Reboot. Welcome back to Aadhaar Reboot, and I'm just going to take this debate forward. We heard out from Nikhil Kumar as well as Kiran Charalagada. Time to bring in Pranesh Prakash. Pranesh, Kiran was rather scathing in his commentary. He said that perhaps it's too little too late. But even if you look at what Nandan said in the interview, and I've been speaking to people who worked on UIDAI, virtual ID was actually thought about way back in 2009, 2010. It's just that they thought it was ahead of its time. They're implementing it now. But saying that, this is also not good, eKYC, limited KYC also doesn't help. So, what is the constructive way out? After giving Aadhaar numbers to 1.1 billion people, people have started using it for various services. I mean, you can't just say, nothing is working for Aadhaar, let's just destroy Aadhaar. So, why are we not using these measures to take the debate forward?
My own position lies somewhere in between that of Nikhil and Kiran's. I believe this is a good step forward. But unlike what Nikhil said, this is the right step, but at the wrong time. This is something that should have come in 2009 at the design stage and should have been implemented from 2010 onwards. And at this stage, it helps protect against some of the privacy harms that people tied to Aadhaar, but it actually doesn't address many. For instance, the concerns that people have around surveillance, state surveillance, are not addressed by this. As Kiran pointed out, there are something called global AUAs. We don't know what those are or why they have been exempted, but they have been exempted. And most importantly, this virtual ID, it's actually not mandatory. So it's only if someone chooses and someone with an internet connectivity who knows about virtual IDs logs into the resident portal and creates virtual IDs and starts using those. So there are multiple hurdles, whereas what was needed was privacy by design right at the beginning. Apart from those, as you very rightly noted in your interview with Mr. Nilekani, this actually doesn't guard against things like exclusion. And let me point out that exclusion isn't only about not having an Aadhaar number. It is also about the Aadhaar number not working for lack of internet connectivity at the ration shop, for lack of your fingerprint working. My own father, due to his age, most of his fingerprints are worn out and they just don't work. And the situation in places like Rajasthan is much worse.
Right, Pranesh. Right, Pranesh, I get your point. Unfortunately, we just have 1.5 minutes, so I'm going to get closing comments from all three of you. Nikhil, Kiran, Pranesh, in that order. Your quick closing comments on where this goes from here, considering we also have the constitutional validity hearing coming to the Supreme Court. 30 seconds each. Nikhil, I'm going to start with you. Not more than 30 seconds.
So number one, I'd like to clarify it, to all the viewers today that the so-called Aadhaar leaks and, all the future dangers that people were talking about, some sort of sci-fi stuff, is some, the current technology framework that UIDAI has put out kind of minimizes that. So I'd like to assure all the viewers that UIDAI is actually taking the right steps. Number two, as iSpirit, as an organization, we hope to work with UIDAI, conduct workshops to ensure that all the startups and everybody else in the ecosystem who's using Aadhaar implement these regulations that UIDAI has put out on time and in a secure way.
Right. Kiran, your thoughts?
I think Nikhil made a fairly pertinent point. And let's start with the attitude, that UIDAI has this extremely hostile attitude towards the community. They don't talk to the public. They don't talk to even the agencies that are working with them to implement various services. anybody reporting an issue previously gets a threat of being arrested or having their life ruined and so on. And the fact that an organization like iSpirit can get special access and privileges while the rest of us have been threatened into silence, I think is the first problem that they need to deal with. That if UIDAI is serious about being the foundation of identity in this country, then act like a foundation. Be nice to people. Don't harass them all the time. Maybe then we can talk about what's wrong with the technology.
Right. Right. Okay, Kiran. Pranesh, your quick thoughts, please. Last 20-30 seconds.
I think this is a very welcome step. I'm thankful for UIDAI for having taken this, but I also believe that this needs to be made mandatory, that global AUAs need to be explained properly or completely removed from the scheme, and eventually down the line, I hope that we get rid of centralized biometrics, because that's a great security risk, and we can have a national ID system without centralized biometrics as well.
Right. On that note, thank you all so much for talking to us. Clearly, this is the first step, but it's not the end. There are larger issues with respect to database breach as well as exclusion, which has to be addressed. And hopefully, UIDAI will have a more engaging attitude when it comes to ethical hackers and whistleblowers. But on that note, completely out of time on this special show, Aadhaar Reboot. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to ED Now for news and updates.